Hi, guys. Happy Monday. Glad to see you. Glad you're here. And hopefully, you get something interesting out of today's show. I have a pretty amazing PR professional here. Thank you for being here for tea time. Tea time can mean a lot to a lot of people. For us sister girls, tea time is usually when we spill the tea or we're talking about some tea. And my guest today he has some tea too. And if you follow him and you follow he has his own podcast. You will get tea on people doing interesting things. You will get tea on this profession and people that work in this profession. And he's also a guest for our PR lunch hour. So he might even have a little tea on some of us. I don't know. You should ask him. And he's here today bringing you Mr. Jody Fisher, the host of the PR podcast. Now, listen, I know sometimes y'all go to podcasts and you're like, what is this podcast about? It's the PR podcast, okay? So I think you know what it's about. And the reason we started Tea Time was to help people better understand what public relations really is, how brands benefit from having a solid PR strategy, what that looks like, and why it's important. So to bring on the master himself, Mr. Jody Fisher, hey.
Hello, Tanya. How are you?
Glad that I'm here with you today. So that's great for a Monday. So I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing terrific. Thank you for having me on. This is a real pleasure. I've watched your show a lot, and so to now be in the guest seat, it's pretty cool. Yeah, usually I'm in the host seat, right? Usually I'm the one asking the questions. Now it's reversed, so this is going to be fun.
I know. And then you have this hot takes. I'm going to see if I can get you on some hot takes too before you get out of here. But let's go ahead and get started with you telling the people a little bit about yourself and what public relations is to you.
Sure. And again, thanks for having me. I've been at this public relations thing for more than 20 years now. Before that, I was a radio reporter. And you see the radio geek in me dies hard. I still got the microphone. I still got the headphones. I'm here in what I refer to as my PR garage. This is where I set up at the beginning of COVID. And so you will see all forms of interesting garage related things behind me. This is the home office. This is the studio. This is where no one else wants to come. So this is why I set up out here. But, public relations has been what I do for the last 20 years. And like I said, before that, a radio reporter, sort of that transferable skill jump that I made all those years ago. And I've always kept at the core of that telling stories, because I think that's what we do, whether we're in public relations or we're on the other side of the desk in the newsroom, or we're a reporter out in the field or a videographer or photographer. We're all in the business of making news and telling stories and deciding what stories need to get told. And so from the PR person's perspective, it's helping those people who maybe don't know how to tell their story or don't know how to tell it as effectively as they should. We get to help them do that. And we sort of fly that flag of making sure that we're telling things in an honest way, in an ethical way, in a right way.
I love that. So listen, you tell stories in what industry? What is your niche? I know you call yourself kind of a generalist. Explain what a generalist is to people. And even though you might say you're a generalist, there's certain things that you are better at. There are certain things that you really get. What is that?
Absolutely. Well, a generalist is kind of like that jack of all trades, right? I'm a little good at everything, but I'm not great at any one thing.
You are. Get it out.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But my focus in my current position is healthcare, higher ed, financial services, those types of clients, right? And I've represented my first PR gig was a college here in the New York area. So spent a lot of time in higher ed. I currently have a lot of healthcare clients. I currently have some financial services clients, but I've also spent a lot of time in real estate and construction. I've represented a lot of different people across real estate and construction. Larry Silverstein at the World Trade Center in New York City. The Friends of the High Line, which if you're familiar with New York City, it's that elevated park that was built on an old elevated railway. That was a combination of an infrastructure and a construction and a works kind of a client. Lots of different clients across that industry, and I represent a few of them currently as well. But then, I will work for and with any client who I can believe in. And I really think that the PR person, to a degree, needs to drink a little bit of the Kool-Aid. They need to be the cheerleader for that. They need to be able to believe in that client. I have turned down plenty of clients who I just didn't believe in. And it's not that I thought maybe they were bad people. Yeah, occasionally those come across.
In real estate, come on. Yes, they do.
But some, you just look at them and you go, I can't get on board with what you're doing, or I'm not going to be good at what you want me to do, and I'll refer them to someone else. Food PR is a great example. I've had plenty of people approach me, restaurants and chefs and all the people doing food PR. I refer them to a friend of mine who does food PR because he's great at it. But you got to believe in the people that you're representing, because at the end of the day, you're going out and you are selling that story to other people, and you're putting your own reputation on the line, saying, I believe in this. You should believe in this too. Here is this great story that you should be telling because it's a great story. And it comes down to what you and I have talked about a lot, Tanya, is relationships and reputation.
Absolutely. And now in this time of, I don't know if we can really even call it post-COVID, but during COVID, especially since you do work in the healthcare industry, have you had any interesting PR opportunities that were related to COVID? Have you landed any cool stories that had to do with COVID or something around it? Tell me about a story that really affected you or was impactful during this time.
Sure. Two clients that stand out for me that caught themselves in the thick of COVID. One client was a nationwide pediatric chain called PM Pediatrics. And they are still very active in this space, especially now with the vaccine coming out for kids. But if you dial back to March 2020, when nobody knew what was going on, we were very active with them, putting their doctors out and having their medical experts tell what they knew at the time, and sort of moved with the science of what was going on with COVID, which back then we were calling coronavirus. And it turned into what it specifically was, which was COVID-19. Had them tell that story from a medical perspective, so placing their medical experts and sort of being out there. And then at one point they were, they turned their clinics, which weren't receiving patients in an urgent care way, into testing sites, into then vaccination sites, into sort of, they moved with the times. They did a lot of telemedicine. They were on the forefront of pediatric telemedicine at the time, so really help them tell that story, and in the process not only serve the public good, but also help them with their business, help them pivot from being primarily an urgent care kind of place where you came in from everything from a boo-boo to something really serious, with the kids, to running their business, out in the parking lot with tents doing COVID testing and things like that. Another client in the healthcare space that I had that found themselves in the thick of COVID is a nursing home, which is local here in the New York area where I live. And I don't even have to explain what the nursing homes went through. If you followed anything about COVID, you know that nursing homes were ground zero for this horrible virus, and continue to be. And so helping them grapple with the impact of COVID on the population that was there in the nursing home, the impact to their business, because it did have impacts to the business of running the nursing home, and then helping them walk through this in the same way that the pediatric urgent care provider did, walk through the rebound of, okay, how do we get people healthy? How do we save lives? How do we now administer the vaccine? How do we administer the vaccine to staff and family members? They went out and they were vaccinating family members and family members of staff that wanted it, trying to create this bubble around all the residents, and really fought hard. And then on top of that, fought with the governor, the former governor now of the state of New York, because he was fudging the numbers on the nursing homes, and we had to very publicly push back on I'm gonna call it out, the lies that he was telling about nursing homes and the numbers. Flat out not not reporting the right numbers, and worked with a nursing home to be very, very transparent. Sad as the news was on how many people had succumbed to COVID, how many people had tested positive, what wards and what hallways were shut down, all that kind of stuff. Very, very transparent, right out there in black and white in the newspaper and on TV. And got to the point where we were having reporters ask the governor questions at his daily press conferences. How come these numbers aren't the same as the ones you're reporting? And that is part of what led to his downfall.
So you were involved in this? You were working with a firm that was actually involved in this during the thick of it?
Yes, the nursing home is my client. So I was working directly with them to help them tell their story. And again, this goes back to what we talked about in the beginning. It's telling the story in an open and honest and ethical way. And they made a decision. I'll give the CEO of the nursing home credit. It would have been very easy to run and hide. And you saw a lot of nursing homes across the country did just that. They ran and hid because they didn't want to, whether it was scare people or put out a bad story, because people were dying. People in nursing homes were dying, and people in my client's nursing home, a lot of them, many died, but 3 times as many survived. And we also tried to tell that story. And not only that, but the staff that was working so hard to take care of these people, they were working just as hard as anyone in a hospital. And this is not a who did a better job story. I'm not trying to say that. They were working so hard, and they felt like they were being left behind because the nursing homes weren't getting PPE. The nursing homes were not, and I'm saying big nursing homes across the state were not getting the help that hospitals were getting from the state. And we really had to fend for themselves. So we worked with them to tell that story and make sure that we were completely transparent about everything.
So here's the question that many people will benefit from. Even when there's something negative going on, I mean, some people call it spin. You call it transparency. How do you get clients to recognize that the way that you tell the story will benefit them even when they don't see that? Even when they don't see that?
That is the $69,000 question. I'm dating myself, but you know what I mean.
Yep.
It's a hard thing. It's a hard conversation to have with some clients. Now, like I said, this particular nursing home made the decision without even my counsels right off the top. We are going to be transparent. We are going to tell the truth. I spent 8 years working for Howard Rubenstein, who is the dean of modern public relations. Sadly passed away last year. He used to have a sign on his desk. It was a quote from Mark Twain. It said, if you always tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything. And he famously didn't take notes in meetings because he remembered everything, because he just told the truth, and he urged all his clients to tell the truth. And I think that's, you use that word spin. That is nails on a chalkboard for us good PR people, because we don't spin, right? Spin implies lie. We frame a story that is a story that reflects positively on our client, but we never ever invent details. We never ever stretch the truth.
But there are those that do. So
and those are the ones they make TV shows about, because those are the ones who are juicy, right? We're not juicy. I had a colleague who used to say, we get, as PR people, we get paid to be 2 steps back and 1 to the left. In other words, we get paid to be out of the frame. We get paid to put our clients forward and help tell their story, and then step back and let them run. That's what we do. And we need to guide them in making the right decisions. Good press follows good decisions. If you do good work and you make good decisions and you do the right thing, that is what results in good press, in my opinion.
Okay, so you're going to need to talk to the people that think they can tell you what publications they want to be in, and you can guarantee that happens. And if that can't happen, then they can't work with you, or you're not good at your job. Talk to me.
Well, number one, as PR people, we can never guarantee. That's what ads are for.
Okay.
What we say is we evaluate the client. Here, let me step back. here's what I do whenever I'm signing up a new client. The first conversation that I have is, tell me your story. Tell me what you want to accomplish. Don't tell me what newspaper you want to be in. Don't tell me what TV program you want to be on. Tell me what you do. What's your business about? What is your goal about? What gets you out of bed in the morning? Because I can get you in the newspaper. You can cut it out, put it in a frame, hang it on the wall. You can stare at it. In a year, it'll be yellow, and you'll say, when we're going to do that again. That's not what we do. We help drive people's goals. We help drive people to where they want to get to in their business or in their not-for-profit, or, we sometimes, help the museum sell more tickets, or we help the not-for-profit raise more money, or we help the real estate person, build a skyscraper and navigate the process. And there is a process to building a skyscraper that doesn't involve engineering and everything else. You can't guarantee press. And I even put it in the contracts. This contract is not a guarantee of press. It is the expression of a good faith effort to obtain publicity that helps drive your business. I'm very upfront about that because we can't guarantee that stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So tell me, because you are very good at what you do, but no one's perfect. And you are transparent and letting people know, listen, I can't guarantee what you want, but I'm going to try my hardest. What is one of your PR fails that you wish to take back or do over or not take?
So many. There's so many.
Stop it.
No, and serious, I'm a firm believer in this. If you don't make mistakes, you're not human. If you don't make mistakes, you aren't doing much, right? We take as PR people, we take a lot of swings at the ball, and we miss far more than we hit, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we do. And that's okay. That's okay, because that's the business that we chose. You know what? The PR fail that sticks out to me, the one that taught me the most, is one that was very private. And in fact, I don't think I've ever mentioned it before. But when you asked me this question, I thought back to something that really impacted me and really changed my attitude about how I went about doing what I do. Again, it was a Howard Rubenstein story. And I think I was working for him less than a year at that point. And he liked to get memos. He liked to, he was an old school guy, right? I mean, he started his business 50 years prior to the moment I walked in the door, and he had a business 20 years after that. And I wrote it, and he liked to get memos, right? And you literally wrote the memo and you printed it out and you brought it to him, or you put it in his mailbox, and he would sit and he would scribble handwritten notes back to the person who wrote it. And typically they were one word, no, yes, no, you should try this, blah, 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 that kind of thing. So I wrote this memo, and I think I just rushed through it, but I got it back, and it said something like, it was not mean. It was true, because I obliterated it. I didn't, the sentences, it was sloppy, right? And that's the word that he wrote across the top of the memo. Sloppy.
Wow.
And it just tore right through my chest, because here was a man I admired. Here was a man I had wanted to work for, and I knew that I could learn so much from. And he just wrote that word, and that stuck with me. And I was never sloppy again. Because if you're sloppy, telling your story to a client's story to a reporter, and that's what he was trying to get across to me. That was an internal memo between him and me, right? And my supervisor at the time. And she came in and she just gave me that look. She's like, don't do that again. Right. And he never held it against you. He never, ever. And he wrote far more glowing notes than he did negative notes, but he told you when you needed to, get smacked in the head a little bit. That stuck with me, and I've never been sloppy since.
Wow. That burned a little bit, huh?
You bet. And it should have, because I read back through it, and it was sloppy. It was horrible.
Shame on you, Jody. Shame.
There you go. But
we all learn these lessons on a regular
right.
basis, and it helps us to make our businesses better. Do you mentor, or how do you pass down the knowledge that you have about this industry to the next generation of leaders?
I do. I mentor when I can. We have interns at our firm, and we'll take folks under my wing. I've had a lot of assistants over my career, especially when I was at Rubenstein. I had a lot of assistants who have gone on to be incredible publicists in their own right, and I follow them to this day. I see them on Instagram and on LinkedIn, and we talk, and I see them, rising up and doing great work in their own right, and getting married and having families and everything, and you feel like a dad. You're like, oh man, look at them go. It's that kind of thing. Really, really proud of the people who I've crossed paths with, who have crossed paths with me and have gone on to better things. You just try to instill in people the why they're here and the what they should be doing, and the way they should be conducting themselves. And sometimes it sticks and sometimes it doesn't, but I'm very proud of all the young people who I've been able to mentor over the years.
One of the things that I have struggled to get clients to understand, because it's such a cliche, is that their brand is important. And when they can tell their brand story and really put out who they are and why someone should care, what that looks like and what that feels like, because a brand is really that connection, that emotional connection that the public or their target market has with them when they hear their name, their company's name. Many times they don't get that, or why it would or wouldn't keep them from getting coverage. What is your best advice to anyone that is still struggling with their brand?
That's a great question. And I want to unpack it a little bit. Let's think. Well, your brand is an expression of who you think you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if your brand comes across as confusing, your website is kind of a mess. And, I even saw a website like this yesterday morning. Maybe it was this morning. Oh, time marches on. But I saw this website. Someone sent it to me, and I clicked on the website and I looked through it, and it was just kind of a mess. And I was like, what are these people talking about? Why? What is their story? I struggled to figure out what they were talking about. I knew the subject matter, but I was waiting for the dots to connect.
Mm-hmm.
And it just didn't hit. But for the fact that I knew what they were talking about, and so I could decipher it a little bit. I think you need to really understand your brand story. And the agency that I work with, I work inside of a larger advertising and marketing agency, and I see the folks who sit down with clients, who walk clients through telling the brand story. And it's a lot of research, it's a lot of digging, it's a lot of interviews. It can be a weeks and months long process, depending on what the order is. You really have to figure that out before you can run out and do what we do, which is telling that story. You got to fix your foundation before you can build your house.
Yep. So when someone comes to you and you're struggling with their story, clearly they're struggling with their story, how do you let them know, like, you're not ready for PR?
I think you say just that. I am not subtle. You know me. I am not subtle. I will, politely and kindly and all, but you say, we can't tell this story yet because, and if we go out right now with this story, they're gonna go back. I mean, reporters are covering 10 times the number of stories that they covered 20 years ago in a day. They don't have time to do an awful lot of homework to figure stuff out. They'll research and they'll find out the facts, but they're not going to build the narrative for you. That's your job to build that narrative first. They want to jump in when they know the players. They want to jump in when they've got all they want to be handed the background and handed okay, you want me to do this and this and this. Okay, fine. And then they can go and do their investigative reportive job. If they've got to figure out who's what and where and why, on to the next one, man, because they've got 20 others that they can do.
They want to be able to verify the information, not have to go dig it up. Information you should be providing them already.
Great word. Verify that information. Absolutely. And so you got to tell the client this. You got to say, we're not ready yet. We can do this in a little while. We've got to figure out your story and what you do. Because as a PR person, I've got to be able to convey that client's story in 3 sentences.
Yep.
I don't have time to write a book on the background of everything. And that's even 3 sentences with hyperlinks that go to a website that say, here's this video and here's the bio on the CEO and here's the everything else, right? Yeah, you got to build a foundation first. And just be honest with the client, be honest with them, because if you promise them, you know, what is it? Under and over, under promise and over
Under
deliver,
promise and over deliver.
something,
Yep.
right? That's
Great. That's great customer service.
It's expectation management a little bit, but it's also being honest. It's saying, look, not every story belongs in the fill in the blank, your New York Times or your CNN or your wherever you think you want to be. You got to walk that ladder. I've used this phrase too with clients. You got to walk that ladder up. If no one's ever heard of you, you can't start up here. You got to start a little lower, couple steps down, get some press in those smaller outlets and build that foundation too. Because the first thing a reporter is going to do is Google.
Yep.
And if the reporter doesn't come up with any other articles about you, you're not legit. You've never been reported on before.
I say it all the time. So listen, I'm going to ask you one more before I get you out of here. But I want to talk about social media and social media numbers really quick. There are some people that think if their social media is popping, they're going to get coverage and they deserve coverage. There's also people that don't think that their social media numbers matter at all. There is a healthy balance. How do you talk to clients about their social media and how it relates to PR efforts on your end?
I think your social media is extraordinarily important for the purpose of telling your story. It is an extension of what you do on your website, what you do in the four walls of your business, or whatever, however you conduct what you do every day. It is part of the narrative. It is part of the story that you tell about yourself. The metrics don't matter unless you're a Kardashian or I don't know what, where your metrics matter, right? You're getting paid for clicks or whatever, however that works. I have no idea how that works. Unless you're there, just focus on your story. Use the social media networks that make sense for you to tell your story. And it can be Facebook, it can be Instagram, it can be LinkedIn, it can be Twitter, it can be wherever you want to be. It can be TikTok. I'm horrible at TikTok. I got 3 videos on TikTok. And 2 of them are like me and my daughter. But but I use Twitter a lot, right? And I use Instagram a lot. Partially because they're easy, partially because I kind of know what I'm doing there. I find Facebook useless at this point. But tell your story. Use those social platforms to tell your story, an extension of your story, of your narrative. Don't pay attention to the numbers. Build a community. You know this, Tanya. I mean, we're in a little PR community online, right? And we are constantly supporting each other. Yep. We're constantly sharing information and talking to each other. That's what you need to use social to do, is to build that community and tell your story. So again, when reporters go and check you out where they think you should be, you're there.
Yeah. So my statement, my question is always, who are you and why should I care? And you should be able to use your social media to help you supplement the other work. It's a supplement. It's not the directive. It's not going to be the deciding factor, but it definitely should supplement the work that you do. And there should be some interaction between you and the community that you're building. So maybe it's not 100,000 followers, but the 100 followers that you have should at least be interacting with you. And it's your job to make that happen, because it's still social media. You're still socializing. So don't forget that part. Media piece of it is the extra. The social part of it is what you are supposed to be using to build and continuously grow your community around the work that you do, which makes it significant. Who are you and why should I care? Well, this is how I'm changing people's lives. This is how I'm improving the quality of life for other people. This is how I'm working to change this industry. Whatever it is, who are you and why should I care? I need to know that. Jody, tell the people how they can keep up with you, what you have going on, what they can look out for, and how they can cyber stalk you like I do.
Oh, you're so kind. I welcome all cyber stalkers. Please, please. You can find me most places at Jody Fisher. That's JODY FISHER. I'm very inventive with my handle. If there's a couple that I'm Jody Fisher 70, I think Instagram I'm Jody Fisher 70. Everywhere else I think I'm Jody Fisher. And you can listen to the PR podcast. We drop a new episode every Monday on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, such, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. So check that out. Just Google the PR podcast. Again, very obvious with our name. And check that out. Those are stories from people I know and people I come across who have a role in the news business. So we go a little hard into, PR and news geekdom in there. It's certainly not meant for everybody, but if you're involved in the news process or the PR process, I think it's a great resource, and we've got a terrific community there. So please check us out.
Absolutely. Listen, guys, thank you for showing up. Thank you for listening in, diving in with some of your own thoughts. I'm gonna let Jody get out of here, but I will see you back here next week for some more tea time. We didn't even get into hot topics, Jody. You might have to come back, sir. You might have to come back, or maybe we can do a IG live. I don't know. I'm a little jealous.
Ooh, I love that.
IG live, talking all things PR with one of our other buddies. Ooh, I'm so envious. But yeah, we might have to have you back. So let's go ahead and thank Jody for being here, and I will see you guys next week. Same bat channel, same bat place.
Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you.